So today it's just going to do YouTube live, and I'm going to just pause it as soon as it starts up, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. We're on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talk Sex with Dr. V and Mojo.
Hi, I'm Dr. V.
And I'm Mojo.
And we're trying to get our technology better and better all the time. And the reason we're coming to you on Thursday is because both Mojo and I are traveling tomorrow. And so we won't be able to connect at 5 o'clock tomorrow. And we want to make sure we have this pre-recorded so we can republish it on Facebook, which is where you'll see it tomorrow. But today, we do have a link, and we are running this webinar, so you could join us by just clicking on the link for the webinar. It's on Zoom, and if you go to our Facebook page on the Center for Relationships website, Facebook page, you will see the link for the webinar there. And our topic today, Mojo, is going to be about consent, particularly consent for sexual relationships.
Yes, it's been a big discussion for, I think, probably the last 20 years, but the last 5 years, it's just like really, really ramped up. I think especially in light of a lot of sexual violence on college campuses. It's gotten more media attention because of, social media and globalization kind of squishing us all together a little bit more. And politicians are finally talking about it. Joe Biden just gave an amazing speech on a college campus where he spoke directly to males. And I think that's been a huge piece of the puzzle that's been missing, is males in leadership roles communicating this message, not just females, because that really disrupts the power systems that perpetuate this violence keeping going.
And I think, the whole idea of particularly the rape culture or preventing sexual assault has been focused a lot on women, empowering them, being empowered to report rape, being more thoughtful, like, how many women do you know, especially in college, that will not leave their drink for even a minute? Or if they do, they touch it. Right. Because there's been a fear put into women about, you are somehow responsible for making sure that rape doesn't happen to you because you're going into quote unquote a rape culture, just accept it. And I think Joe Biden really is saying something very, very important, which is no, we should not accept it. And it's not okay. It's not acceptable. And this isn't about empowering women. This is about educating men.
Yeah.
Because if men didn't rape, we wouldn't have to worry. And, it's not like men are the only ones who rape. But the truth is, the victims of rape tend to be both men and women. And the perpetrators of rape are predominantly men. So let's just say it like it is, okay? So men rape men and men rape women. And so when men are taught to both have sex with complete and full consent, or as Biden calls it, what we're going to watch in a minute, affirmative consent. Yeah. And then when men learn the impact on their own mental health and on the mental health of women when they engage in rape, and decide personally never to do it, whether in a dating relationship, non-dating relationship, or even in a marriage.
And to call their friends out, to stop their friends when they see that happening as well.
Right. So I'm really fired up about this. I'm so glad we're doing this topic.
Me too. We can't just keep doing this. Hey girls, here's how to not get raped, and here's how to take care of yourself when you get raped, and the rape kits are just piling up. Like, something has to shift. We have to approach this from a different angle, go to a deeper depth. Otherwise, we're going to just be going around in circles here in painful circles.
Absolutely. So what we thought we would do, and I have this already set up and ready to go, is we will watch a 2-minute clip of Joe Biden's talk on this college campus. I'm trying to remember what college campus it was. George Mason University. Okay, this was on NBC News, and you can find it on YouTube. It was published on April 27th, and Joe Biden, former vice president, is talking about sexual assault awareness. and delivers what they call some blunt advice. And so let me share the screen. And is that okay, Mojo? You ready for that? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video, the 2.5-minute video, and then we're going to talk about it.
When you see something, if you're a fraternity brother, and you see a young freshman co-ed in the second week, dead drunk, and him walking her up the stairs, you got to walk up and say, hey, not in my house, Jack. Not in my house. Because if you don't, you are an accomplice. You know what's about to happen. You know. I really mean this. You're an accomplice. Now, it may be, and I mean this sincerely, for you women thinking it's easy. It's awful hard for a guy to do that. Especially if he's smaller, especially if he is not as popular, if he is not the guy who can physically take it on. But you have an obligation to say something. Say, hey, where you going, pal? You have an obligation, and you women have an obligation that you don't always meet. All the status shows. And this is my staff says, oh, don't be critical. This is about truth. Ladies and gentlemen, all the statistics show that if a young woman is abused, the person she's most likely to confide in on a college campus is her roommate, her friend. It also shows significant number of roommates don't do anything about it. They put their arm around her, they console her, they feel badly for her. But you got to know what to do. You got to know who to call. You got to be part of an effort on the campus, which your president has done and many presidents have not done. You've got to have something on this campus where there's a place to go, where there are people who are professionally trained to know not to ask questions like, what were you wearing? Were you drunk? Guys, a woman who's dead drunk cannot consent. You are raping her. You are raping her. If you cannot say it's okay.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our...
I want to go back. There's another clip of this. This is the one that I also want to play because I think it's...
You need a website. Why not do it yourself? Go to Wix.com to create your stunning website today.
I don't have the ad skip. Sorry. Here we go.
A woman who's dead drunk cannot consent. You are raping her. You are raping her. If you cannot say it's okay, I really mean this. We got to talk about this. Consent requires affirmative consent. And if you're too drunk to be able to consent, it is not consent. A young woman standing here could take all her clothes off and walk out the door. She could be arrested for indecent exposure, but no man has a right to lay a hand on her at all. None. Please, act like men. No man, the only one. He's a coward, man. It's a simple proposition. Rape and sexual assault are not about sex. They're about power. They're cowards. I mean that in a literal sense. They're cowards.
All right. Perfect.
He's powerful.
Yeah, and it's so, I'm so sick and tired of the politically correct and,
Welcome to Carvana.
Oh, sorry.
Carvana is the only...
I'm so sick and tired of all the kind of rhetoric around this and the arguments about feminism and all sorts of things because we haven't been telling the truth. And when I watch him, I feel like he's telling the truth. He's telling the truth about what people think and what people do, how people justify not doing anything or thinking that it's the woman's fault. It's about time that we tell the truth.
Agree. There's so many complex pieces to it. So I understand why people have a hard time, hitting the nail on the head and articulating it. And there's lots of taboo, and, there's lots of people lobbying to protect frat boys and victim shaming and all kinds of stuff. So it's a difficult terrain to navigate at all. But I think like the more we can get information and knowledge out there to the right ears, that's the only way we can transform it into wisdom that kids can take and use in real experiences like that. But these places are where we teach humans how to go do that in relationship, because I see issues related to consent broadly, not just, in adolescents and in undergrads, but in people that come and see me in couple relationships, asking that question, like, is this really what I want right now? Is this what I want to be doing? Do I fully enthusiastically give myself in this moment for pleasure's sake, for mutual pleasure, because it feels safe? Like, I wish more people just approached it like that, because the whole idea of getting consent, like going to someone to get that consent, it's so transactional, and we already have so much sexual dysfunction related to treating sex like a transaction and like women's bodies like capital, that let's pump the brakes on that.
Absolutely. And it really changes it it kind of creates this one directional, like, I'm horny, so I want to come get consent from you. So that implies that you may not be horny, and you have to deal with my persuasion, no matter how nice it is, right? Mm-hmm. Or my coercion. And you have to make a decision. Do I want this or not? And I think there is nothing more irresistible than having sex with somebody who is into you and into the experience. There is nothing else on earth that is as good as that. So why would you settle for a terrible buffet and go back for seconds?
It shows you how much information and wisdom is lacking, and especially like young men just frequently don't have access to any education in sexuality. But just the idea that that one could get pleasure from raping someone else and coercing sex from them, it is not. If we look at men and what they report as being number one turn on, reliably, it's seeing desire in the sexual partner and seeing pleasure in the sexual partner. So in a situation where there's rape, you're not going to be getting that. And so, I mean, you might get an erection and have an ejaculate experience, but that's not the same thing as pleasure. And then you're going to be, a lot of what people don't talk about too is all of the shame and the stigma and the stuff that can get landed in those guys' laps. And frequently, and this is not to justify, there's never an excuse, but when there's alcohol and all of this stuff, there's shame that lands on both sides. And it's so difficult to talk about this piece in my mind, because it's just like with affairs, we don't want to say hey, the involved partner's feelings really matter, hurt partner. We want to listen to their side too, because we want to take care of that hurt partner. We want to nurture them, especially at first. But in this consent conversation, we've heard female voices, we hear those narratives, and we listen and we honor that. And it's not a zero-sum game. If we attend to and listen to these male perspectives, their experience of rejection and what that's like, and how they are unable to control impulses when experiencing that big emotion, we have to create a space that's safe enough to have those vulnerable conversations about shame and rejection and all of that stuff that we raise guys, we tell them, no, don't talk about that. You're not allowed to do that. We don't do feelings. And if you have feelings, don't share them. But also, I need you to be here and feel with me. So guys are put in this massive double bind, and they're not socialized the same way as ladies are to be hey, look at these double standards. Oh my gosh, I'm experiencing this double standard. We rail against that all the time. But I think we sometimes fail to see some of the double binds men get put in by virtue of being told you don't get to have feelings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's so true. What I really liked about what you said is the zero-sum game. John Gottman, in his book, The Science of Trust, really lays out a very elegant mathematical formula. And actually, the person who talked about this mathematically was John Nash. And he had a whole theory of mutual interest, like how to maximize positivity or how to maximize the outcome. And he developed this theory, and John Gottman uses it in relationships. But the idea is, mathematically, if both people are trying to get their own needs met, then what's going to happen is there's going to be no trust in the relationship. And then the person who has the more coercive power or manipulative power will win. But that doesn't leave either one of them feeling good about it.
Yeah.
So zero-sum games reduce trust and reduce dopamine. It makes people feel more anxious and more on guard about whatever it is, not just sex. So it's actually when both people, and can I just give the mathematical proof for this?
Please, I love to know it.
So Jane and John live together in an apartment, and Jane likes to have a clean apartment, right? So she doesn't like cleaning. So what she could do is either decide she's going to clean even though she doesn't like cleaning. So that's not the best outcome for her, right? She's doing something she doesn't like. Or she could spend some time and energy persuading and coercing John that he should clean the apartment. John also loves it when Jane cleans the apartment, but he hates cleaning. So he could either do something for her and clean, in which case he's taking on something he doesn't particularly want to do, or he could spend time and energy trying to persuade Jane to clean, right? In a zero-sum game equation, John and Jane are going to spend a lot of time and energy trying to persuade the other one to clean. And they're going to end up feeling frustrated because even if the other one agrees to clean, that person is going to then carry resentment. They're not going to do as good a job. And so the person who won, so to speak, is going to feel dissatisfied. And then the person who lost is going to feel oppressed.
Because the return on that, isn't going to feel good because it feels like less than coerced.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It turns out that if Jane manages to persuade John to clean, she might have a little victory, but it actually doesn't make her feel like she and John feel close. And if John manages to win and get Jane to clean, he also doesn't necessarily feel close to her. However, if they both say, I hate to clean, let's figure out how to do the things in this cleaning project that we least like to do, then they not only engage in something together, both of them feel like they compromised, but they compromised in a way that sort of on their terms, right? I'm going to clean the parts of this apartment that I don't mind doing. And my partner isn't sitting there watching TV. They're also cleaning right along with me. And the outcome from that is going to be mutual participation, mutual admiration, and greater closeness. So John, it's called the Nash equilibrium, where each person recognizes that working cooperatively is superior to self-interest.
In adult long-term love relationships, I can't think of anything like as important in terms of like sustainable desire on the long run.
That's right. And Nash equilibrium is a great way to understand sustainable desire.
Yeah, because I think and I don't want to confuse people by kind of like bopping in and talking about consent in the adolescent kind of zone and then moving to the adult, but we work with adult couples, and so that's where when you describe that, I think of adult love relationships big time, and that quality of mutuality and coming together. It's an emergent property almost. Like when I think of consent, I was kind of thinking about that earlier, the way that Dan Siegel thinks of like the mind as emergent, like epithelial cells can only like create a protective barrier when they emerge and join together. And so I think of consent as an emergent property that can only come and be itself in its temporary place, which can be stopped by either party or any party at any time, because it emerges out of multiple people coming and bringing this energy and this desire together. And so if one person withdraws it, it collapses immediately because I wish that we thought of it more like that, as opposed to what can I come and take from you so that I can put my dick in you. Does that make sense?
Oh, tell it like it is. Yeah, exactly. You know, Dan Siegel talks about this in terms of the formation of clouds, because when complex systems with multiple variables, multiple layers and variables come together to form this emergent property, right? It's like the butterfly effect. Even one little thing can change what the outcome is. So you end up either with storm clouds because one variable changed, the wind velocity or the circulation, or you end up with very wispy white clouds that don't contain any water, right? And so how do you get the perfect wet, sexy, moist cloud?
Just the right puffy big white cloud. Yeah, I love that metaphor. We're just like the metaphor queens.
We are. I can't stop myself. So in order to get that wet, sexy, moist, beautiful cloud that bears fruit, right? That nourishes and rains on the earth and creates this amazing flourishing, there has to be kind of that complex, layered, multi-layered experience. So consent, the way you're talking about it, I'm kind of riffing off of this. You tell me what you
think. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. So consent isn't just about asking.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just about saying, hey, you want to get some on? Because guess what? For the whole week before that, you've been a jerk. Or, jerk is always associated with men, but it could also be for women, the B word, right? If you've been not very receptive, responsive, available, empathic, then no matter how elegant your consent statement is, you are still not going to end up with the beautiful rain clouds.
I think consent statement is also super important, like as a concept that people don't really talk about, but like creating language around and ritualizing consent. Like, how do I express when I'm interested? And that's why I think like a big part of consent is love mapping. It's knowing the other person's mind, because if you don't know what they like, what they're into, what their mind is, like they might say like, yeah, let's do this, but like, you can't kid yourself. If they're not fully on board with it, you can feel that energy. And that's where I tell my clients that are working on intimacy, don't have sex when it's like that.
Exactly. It's like really tilling the ground, right? And preparing the soil. You can have a sexual experience. You can have intercourse. That's not the same as making love or having synchrony sex, right? Sue Johnson talks about this. She's the founder of emotion-focused couples therapy. She talks about synchrony sex as the sex that's based on a secure attachment relationship where both people want that kind of physical closeness and emotional experience, as well as the sexual, pleasure from each other to give and receive. And that feels like a very different experience when it's within the context of an secure attachment relationship. Otherwise,
you can also do it. Oh, sorry. It's harder when we're in different places to not talk over you. I'm sorry. I think you can also manage that. And this might be kind of not totally in line with what Sue Johnson would say, but I think we can bring qualities of a secure bond into a kind of single serving, more temporary, non-monogamous experience and still create a beautifully emerging, intimate experience. But it's kind of like a different, it's instead of like, are you there for me in the attachment sense? It's like knowing someone is accessible, responsive, and engaged. Though you could also think of consent in those kinds of terms. Like if I need something and I reach out, is my partner accessible? Can I like speak to them? That's like really big in BDSM. Like you need to like make plans for if your mouth is covered, like how can you access and let your partner know what you need? And then that responsiveness, like if I reach out to them, are they gonna listen? Are they gonna like pause if I use my safe word? Like, can I really trust that? And then that emotional engagement, like can I feel their emotional attunement and connected presence in this sexual experience? I mean, even if it's an alt sex, you're just beating the you-know-what out of each other, it can still, if those qualities of a secure connection are there, you can have a beautiful, loving experience in something that might not traditionally like go in that category of like the qualities of an attachment bond.
I love that. I love that idea that you don't have to wait for a secure attachment relationship, that you can really create that experience within a single serving. I like that.
Yeah.
And the fact that it can really be about, one of the things that came out of attachment research with children was that when children were securely attached, they were much more likely to be open to adventure and exploration and thinking outside the box. Creativity, exploration, adventure are much more available to us as brain systems. This is also the work of Jaak Panksepp, right? What he found was that when people had the most important sort of safety mechanisms, safety brain systems were taken care of, then the other ones like sensuality and gender and all of these other brain systems come online.
Yeah. It's like how his rats were able to start being really playful, like once they had like a safe space. If you guys don't know, we just our industry just lost man in research. Known to just Google the rat tickler if you want to see some adorable videos. He was looking at emotion in animals, like one of the first guys to be like, oh, let's study feelings while we're studying the brain.
That's right. That's right. He's amazing. And he wrote one of the most, I think, important textbooks on affective neuroscience. A lot of other people's work really took off from his. But I want to also do a little plug for this book. I don't know if you can see it. Ooh, there's my camera. It's called Squirms, Screams, and Squirts. And it's a handbook for turning great sex into extraordinary sex. And it's written by Robert Rubel, who is actually an Austin author. And what I love about this, I used to use this book when I taught sex therapy, right? And what I love about this was, here are some of his chapters. He says in chapter 1, you have to set the stage, right? A full-blown evening event might be kind of a stepwise progression. And his whole bottom line is, if you want to have the best sex of your life, you want your partner to be screaming with pleasure, right? Don't come on like a ton of bricks and expect that being rough is somehow going to get you that pleasure. All that it gets you is chafed body parts. So think in terms of, how do you really build the anticipation? How do you really build the mental image, the emotional receptivity? And so he has all kinds of wonderful ideas about erogenous hotspots outside the vagina, inside the vagina, really working with stimulation, with eroticism, with lubes, with vibrators, with dildos, oral sex. And so he kind of tells you everything you want to know about the techniques of sex, but he builds it into this conceptual framework that says that the peak sexual experience really comes from this kind of stepwise progression where you're not rushing it. You're not like, let's be done in 7 minutes. You're saying, let's have a 70-minute sexual experience. And let's not worry about getting the orgasm in 7 minutes. Let's see if we can get one orgasm in 20 and then a second orgasm in 45, right? And a third in 70. So then when you start to think like that and you begin to prepare your body to have 3 orgasms in one night, what would you do differently?
Yeah,
right?
It makes you slow it down.
Yeah, it makes you slow down, but it also makes you prepare your body. Right? It makes you prepare.
It's the opposite of what I imagined this kind of like, I think I'm just like, I'm sorry I say frat boys when I like imagine this, but it's the kind of stereotype. And I guess because there's so many like sexual assault cases over there, but that idea of just kind of like, I mean, I even saw reports of guys like printing out like sex consent documents and having girls sign it, like to make sure that they wouldn't like get into a lawsuit. And so as you're talking about, you know, setting the stage, it's just like, I'm imagining someone being like, here, would you sign this document so that if I like, you know, pull some shit, I'm protected? Like, like, does legal documents turn anyone on? I'm like, ugh, like immediately turned off by that alone. But then just the idea that like, that's what their mind is on, like getting to that consent. It's like, how can I push my partner into giving me their consent? That's just like, so, I mean, not the way to have lots of luck.
It also implies that once she has signed the document, she's signed her rights away.
Yes, like you can, like once you, that's what, I think that's the problem I have with the word give with consent. Like, I like the idea of sharing or like co-creating or coming together to have this emergent, but giving it makes it sound like, oh, like no give backs, or like, no, I can have that back. I can at any minute say like, right? There's something in that zone.
And I think men have to get with it that no man has died from having an erection.
Yeah. Like hours long too, like 10, 12 hours, and they're still fine. I mean, it's really uncomfortable, I hear, but still, like, no deaths.
Right. That's right. They might lose the penis, but they're not going to lose their lives. And of course, for a lot of men, the penis is the life. I understand that. I get it. No man has died from having an erection, especially a voluntary one that's not chemically induced. And then there is no such thing as blue balls. And let's say somebody does have blue balls, like they haven't had sex in a long time. It's not a woman's responsibility to fix it. It's a man's responsibility to figure out what he needs and to get it in the most consensual way possible. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the word giving consent, and I don't like any implication that makes it sound like once I have given consent, I can't take it back. Yeah, exactly. You know, your penis could have been inside of me 10 times. On the 11th time, I still have the right to say stop.
Yes.
I'm done.
Absolutely. And that just be respected immediately, no question. I think that's why it's also important that we like build in conversations like before having sex, you know? So it's like, hey, this is what I would say if I ever felt uncomfortable. So that's that love mapping, knowing the mind of that partner, so that you think about all of the potential things that could happen and what would you do if that was the case? Because that shows concern for your partner. Like, come on.
That's right. That's right. And it shows that you are into the person and not just into the act.
Yeah.
You know, if all you want to have is a sexual experience, you know, they sell rubber dolls.
I was about to say, you can go to the sex shop and get like 8 billion kinds of synthetic vaginas, like really.
And, you know, to be fair, I think we're making it very male oriented. I think women too. I know women who decide that the man owes them and that they can demand.
Oh,
and that
absolutely.
Says, yes, you can't, you know, stop in the middle, and they treat him very badly. And it's not okay. It's not okay for women to demand a man give consent, or that once he's given consent, you know, it's done. It's like once and for all. And it's certainly not okay for a woman to coerce a man to have sex.
And that we know is like underreported. There's more shame in it. Guys talk about it less frequently. I know in my clients where the partner that wants to have sex more frequently is the female, there's a lot of issues that can come up in a heterosexual couple related to power there. Because people end up trying to get themselves to do something to please, to make their partner happy. But that's that space where we're not giving full consent. And so our partner is not going to feel our full presence. It's like you're saying with that zero-sum kind of theory.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to bring up this, rape case that came up recently. Remember, was it a Stanford?
The swimmer?
The swimmer.
Ugh, yes.
Who raped this woman behind a dumpster or near a dumpster.
Behind a dumpster is what I understand, yeah.
Yeah. And then the judge was either going to or did give it sort of give him a light sentence or not at all because it was going to affect his career.
Yeah,
And
I'm pretty sure he's already out. Like, didn't you, I remember seeing in the headlines he might already be out. And that same judge, if you look at his record, he applied a like 15-year sentence to someone who was African American for a similar charge too. So it's like there's power, there's privilege, there's race, there's gender. That is just like one of the most disgusting examples of that in action.
And I think that is also a huge problem with consent, that people in privilege think they don't need to work for consent. They think they need to get it when they ask for it. They think that they're the ones who do things like sign this consent form so that anything I do after this, you've already given consent.
Yeah, or I bought this meal, so when we get home and I start coming on to you, you should just like roll with that. And if you don't, then I'm going to be sassy about it. Like, that's another example that I hear all the time.
One of the things Joe Biden said that I think is absolutely right on is that we also make non-consensual sex about the two people involved, and it's really about everybody around them that knows it. Because I remember when I was at UT as a staff counselor and would get people coming and telling me about rape, professors knew about it, and they would not talk to the person who had committed the crime. Roommates knew about it and would try to say something to the woman about how she brought it upon herself. Parents knew about it and tried to make the woman feel bad about the fact that this thing happened to her. And nobody, or very few people, would go and talk to the young man and make him pay equal consequences for the behavior, right? And so one of the things we all need to, as a society, understand that when we're not part of the solution, we're part of the problem. That we are condoning and ignoring and neglecting signs, right? There was I think a 2020 piece that they did where they set it up, right? So they had this young woman at a bar, kind of dressed in a sexy manner, ordering drinks one after the other, but it was really a setup where the bartender knew and she wasn't really getting drunk. She was pretending to be drunk. And then there was they would have another man come in who was also an accomplice. But what he would do is start coming on to her and try to convince her to leave the bar with him and go to his apartment, which is across the street. And she would be obviously inebriated, and he would be walking her out of the room. And the idea was, how many people are going to say or do something? And what they found was 2 cops came in, and they sat right next to her. And they didn't know that they were being recorded, but they were actually making fun of her. And they were actually talking about, hope she doesn't get raped tonight, but she's probably going to. And then when the young man started walking her out of the bar, the 2 of them turned to each other and said, well, he got lucky tonight, or he's going to get lucky tonight. Neither one of them stopped him and said, what are you doing? It's not like the signals weren't clear. Yeah. Right?
What are you doing, man?
There were other women. These cops could have gotten up and said to him, I'm going to arrest you, or I'm going to take you away from the scene because you're about to commit a crime. And that's the stupidest thing you could do. There were other women who came into the bar who would say something to her, would be contemptuous towards her, and not one of them said anything to the man. There were only 2 kinds of people that responded. One was an elderly couple. They actually, the older gentleman tackled the young man and said, don't you lay a finger on her. I'm going to break your arm off. And the older woman, his partner, took the young woman and said, you're going to come with us until you sober up. You're going to come sit by us, and we're going to make sure you're sober before you go anywhere. And the other person that responded that I was so proud of was a veteran. He came in, he watched this happening, and he walked up to the guy and said, be a man. Get sex from a woman who wants to give it to you.
I love that.
I know.
Like,
I
strangers.
what's really sad is that most of the people didn't do anything. And that's my point, is that we all are colluding with the rape culture because we have many, many opportunities when we can say and do something and protect both men and women, because the men who commit rape also pay a price, emotionally as well as legally. Eventually, many of them do, right? And so it is really, you're protecting the man as well as the woman when you say to somebody, don't do it. This is not the way for you to either get off on sex or power or aggression or anything else. Not worth it.
I think there's also ways, just like as I'm thinking about this problem, that like as a system, as a culture, we can start kind of like working against that. You know, even with little kids, you know, I think of watching like the weird uncle being like, give me all the sugars, and like forcing kids to kiss him. You know, I've heard of a great technique that's like, hello, high five, handshake, or hug. And so you tell the kiddos and the family members, like, before we meet, like the child is deciding whether they want to say hello by like hi, giving a handshake, doing a high five, or a full hug. And it's up to them. It's not up to auntie who wants sugars. It is the child's body. And like, yes, I am their parent and providing safety until they're old enough to make their own decisions. But we can start teaching people as little kids how to know what their body is, what their rights are, what it means to be respected, what it means to be autonomous and in control of one's own body, and how to ask for and put themselves in experiences where they can get respected, and also know what to do if that doesn't happen. I think that's when parents have conversations with adolescents and teens, they talk a lot about like what to do, but not the like, what if it goes wrong? Like if you're in that situation and you say stop and no one stops, what do? You know, because those moments, like your children will remember what you say, you know? So having those conversations is so, so crucial. And a lot of parents just don't even talk about it with their kids.
And, you know, as a parent, I can say it's scary to think about it. It's very scary, and we want to avoid it. We want to say, never put yourself in the first place in a situation where something like this can happen. So then we neglect the second half of that lesson.
It's like abstinence only education, right?
Oh my God. Oh God. Let's not go there.
No, I don't have the energy or the life force to even go there. Right.
But you know, what do you teach young people as a parent? Because I think a lot of parents are really genuinely confused. What do I say to my daughter about what she can say or do if she finds herself in a situation where she thinks this is either about to happen, or she finds herself in the middle of somebody coming on to her, or more than one somebody's coming on to her?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I don't have kiddos myself, so it's hard to imagine, but I think it would be important to say something along the lines of like, I'm going to make sure you have as much information and knowledge and put that into practice as much as possible, so that when you get into that situation, you can trust your body, trust your wisdom. Because I think if we teach our daughters, like, you have this amazing wisdom and insight and mirror neurons, and your body is aware of what's going around you. If you start feeling something, like, trust that. Get yourself away. If your body says fight, fight. If it says stay still, listen to that, because that also might protect you as well. But empowering them to tune into their bodies. And, you know, I think that's something that you can instill all the way through their development, you know, by mindfulness, by loving kindness, by doing yoga together, hanging out in their bodies, being able to check in with what they're feeling. That's such a gift, I think. At least that's the way that I would be imagining myself kind of approaching it, is saying, like, once you have enough knowledge and wisdom, you trust that and you trust your body.
That's right. So I completely agree. I think that learning to trust your body, learning to tell when the signals are just starting to form, right? Like your friend is saying, I'm going home with this guy, and, you know, this other guy's going to give you a ride home. That's when you say, no, not going to agree to that. And really being willing as parents to say to your children, you call me and say, I need a ride home. It doesn't matter whether you've been drinking, it doesn't matter whether you've been doing drugs, it doesn't matter who you're with. I will come and give you a ride home, and we will not talk about it that night. I will not harangue you. I will not, because children feel so frightened and guilty of choices they've already made, which then makes them feel like, oh, I deserve what's coming to me. And the parent needs to say, no matter, like Joe Biden was saying, you could have walked into that room butt naked. That still doesn't give somebody the right to touch you.
Absolutely.
So, and I will uphold that. I will protect you. So you call me as soon as you feel like somebody's abandoning you or plans have changed and you feel unsafe. I'm always a call away, or we give them more than one person they can call, right? Call an Uber. Like, I think it's so important for young children, not young children, but young adults to have access to safe rides. And there are many different options for safe rides. So talk to your kids about that. But then I think when we look at rape aggression defense, there are a couple of key, UT does a rape aggression defense class, and other universities do this too.
I did it at Wake Forest. Yeah, I think it was really helpful. I got to like the final test, they put us in body armor and we had like 2 cops come at us and they had the lights off and they film it. And I didn't even remember it, but I like knocked them out. Like it made me feel stronger.
Exactly. So feeling stronger is important, but there's a couple of techniques or tips that I remember. One is take it outside. Do not, as soon as you start to feel like somebody's coming onto you, go outside of the house or the building, because people are less likely to take it to an extreme if you're out in public. And then the second thing is yell, scream, shout fire rather than help. And more people are likely to respond to you when you yell fire. And especially if you're outside and you're yelling and screaming and make a lot of noise, somebody's going to look out the window, and you increase your chances that somebody is going to call the cops or come to your rescue. So if you're running away from somebody, don't run deeper into the house. Run outside the house immediately. Jump out of the window if you need to. You can break a leg and heal rather than, stay and have something really, really horrible happen to you. So think always in terms of what's my exit? How can I exit the situation if I need to? So that you are always in charge of what happens to your body.
Okay, I'm curious now. So how is the conversation that you had different, maybe, and if it's too personal, you don't have to answer, but like different between talking to your daughter and your son? Because you have one of each.
That's a great point. No, that's not, me, I'm always willing to talk about this stuff. I think what's sad is that the conversation I had with my daughter was that other people don't necessarily agree to the rules that we agree to. So she is going into a disadvantage because she's a woman, and another man might think that he has the right. The conversation I had with my son was, you never have the right. You never, ever, ever have the right. It isn't about, and the conversation I had with my son was, it's not about STDs. It's not about getting a woman pregnant. So get that thought out of your head. Carrying a condom around in your pocket is not as important as carrying consent in your head. What is in between the ears is way more important than anything else you're doing to prepare for the sexual experience. So I want an attitude, and I want an awareness and a respect for women, right? Unfortunately, with my daughter, the conversation is there might be men out there that don't have that right attitude, don't have the right awareness, and may not respect you. And so don't fall for the bad guy. Don't fall for the macho dude because he's funny or he's flashy. Pay attention to, does he respect you? Is he courteous? Is he listening? Is he concerned about the impact of his behavior on you?
But see, I want so badly for that kid's parents to be saying to that son, be courteous, be respectful, so that you don't have to be telling daughter how to not get raped. Like, I'm just getting exhausted.
We live in an upside down world, because how many African American parents do you know that have to tell their children
how to not get shot? Yeah.
Yes. be aware that cops may not treat you respectfully. Instead, we should be able to say, don't worry, every cop is going to treat you with respect.
Mm-hmm.
You don't deserve to be
Good
shot
point.
for
Yeah.
driving too fast. So know
Jaywalking.
that cops know that limit. Yeah. So we live in an upside down world on so many of these different issues. There are issues of privilege and oppression. Who has the privilege and what rights do they think they have to oppress somebody else? And that's the equation we need to change.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think exactly where we have to start to shift it and reframe it. That's exactly where we have to go. It's a deep cultural issue that can only be solved if we slow it way down and go to the roots and stop just treating the symptoms on the surface.
That's right. And I would say it starts in kindergarten. It
Yes.
starts that.
Absolutely.
And in kindergarten, kids are engaging in play with across genders, across races, across all kinds of sexual, personal, cultural identities. All of the isms that we worry about as adults aren't really there in kindergarten, first grade. By about second, third grade, they're beginning to really segregate to all these different groups. And the more that we can teach them that, these are safe groups, these are safe ways to play with each other, the more we'll change the next generation.
Well, it's absolutely socialized. You've seen those videos of like the two separate sets of kids receive they're Caucasian children, but they're receiving dolls that are African American. And like one set of the kids are just like, yay, just loving on the dolls. The other ones are like, and like throw the dolls and they're like so upset. And you see the parents laughing in the background. They're like pranking their kids basically in a super racist way. But it's just like they are not born believing that.
Yeah. And I think, so we can change the kids, but we can't change them despite the parents that they live with. So we have to really tackle it on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, because they're watching the parents. Gottman just posted a really great article from HuffPost today on their socials that was like, your daughters are watching how you treat your wife. Your sons are watching how they're watching. So instead of trying to just like solve this huge, scary problem of how do I teach consent with my kids, model it in your relationship. Show your kids what a love relationship looks like when there's accessibility and responsiveness and enthusiastic emotional connection. That seems like the way to really they won't want to have sexual experiences that are coercive and yuck because they won't have a model for that. But if wife is constantly begrudgingly barely consenting to having this terrible sex that she never experienced pleasure in, you're modeling that for your kiddo. And so we can do a lot by just modeling healthy relationships. And maybe that means needing to get into a couples counselor and figuring out how to have healthy relationship, because a lot of people didn't learn that necessarily.
Exactly. I saw your post on Facebook. I thought that was really awesome. Get into couples counseling, asking parents to get into couples counseling rather than doing parenting groups, and not necessarily that it's black or white. It's not like you have to choose the other, but before you go learn how to parent, make sure that you've learned how to be with each other.
Yeah, I just noticed, or the image that I like is the Tolkien, Eye of Sauron is just from the parents, to the kid, you must have happiness, I will make happiness, where it's turn your Eye of Sauron to your partner who's starved for attention over here, get your love relationship going great, and that regulation and energy will flow out to your kids, and they won't feel engulfed or everything is about them, because we have too many people like that in the world right now.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Awesome. It's 5:30. So
that was such a great conversation, Bea. I always love doing this with you. What a cool topic.
I know. It was a great topic. And I hope that people will respond to this topic on YouTube as well as on Facebook, and tell us what you're thinking, ask us questions, and whatever questions you want to ask us, you can send it to us on Facebook at the Center for Relationships, Austin, Texas, and we will answer in our next episode, which will be the first Friday of the month, right? And if we're not in town, we'll try to do the pre-recorded thing again.
Thanks for tuning in, you guys.
Thanks, Mojo. Talk to you soon.
See you, Bea.
Bye.